Good morning, everyone. We have good sound this morning. I was taught on Tuesday night how to get the sound to come out of the TV screen and to pump it up, which I did because the audio we're listening to today is quite quiet. So I think it's going to be good. So there was a little change. I said last Friday that I was going to be playing the second part of that retreat talk, series of talks by Ajahn Sona. I was going to play the next one on Tuesday. And I didn't do that because on Tuesday we were doing a little series on how to, what are the qualities of a good student and what are the qualities of a good teacher. And I found another video in that series. So played that last Tuesday. So this video today follows directly on the one last time. And it's just Ajahn Sona talking to people on a retreat of how to approach the retreat. And today he's going to start talking about the gradual training, which is putting in the baseline of morality, sila.
So we are now past the famous 72 hours and should be feeling just slightly shifting, settling down a little less noticeable, differential from the regular growth, starting to get used to it. You have to assess yourself and decide whether it's time to move towards more an attempt at deeper serenity, or whether you're still having some fatigue. And if you are, then you need to keep up energy. You need to keep in a kind of reflective mode, energizing topics. And last night we talked about the 4 elements. This is a very interesting to contemplate, to become one with the elements, to feel the wind and the water, fire, and the earth, and to know that, in no way that we're supposed to be sophisticated 21st century people. They're really nothing but that, no different than the animals and the plants. So you have to keep reflecting with yourself. Now you may have found some transitions. You may find that you have less of a tendency to take an afternoon nap, or that you do take an afternoon nap, but you feel kind of refreshed after 15 minutes or half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever. Feeling, you got to search around for your own sense of heaviness or battery discharge, like we changed the batteries here on the microphone. And when the mind is going in the right direction, usually life, vital force returns to it. And when it does, then that's really the time to proceed along towards a deeper samadhi. This word samadhi, you hear it enough times in the right context, and you won't need a translation of it. After a while, it becomes one of the most beautiful words in the English language, samadhi. It's kind of no precise translation for it, but somewhere along the lines, somewhere between ecstasy and serenity and freedom, and peace and ease, and balance, all of those things wrapped up in a very beautiful word, samadhi. But samadhi needs battery power, it needs energy, it needs the prerequisites. And when the prerequisites are established, then samadhi comes to you, and not before. So again, I was down in Vancouver on the weekend. Auntie Veronica was saying, he asked everybody, what is the greatest enemy of samadhi, of jhana, actually, of jhana? Various people took a stab at it, but what he said is basically sleep, falling asleep, is the usual problem when we try to get to these more refined and deeper absorptive states. That when we look for that kind of refinement, we tend to get pulled off into sleep. And as you mentioned, people confuse deep meditation for just nodding off. So we have to understand the difference that it is not sleep. No quality of heaviness to it. It's very, very light quality, very, very energized. Mindfulness, that is attentive awareness, is heightened. So we have to have a lot of images of freshness, of greenness, of light force flowing to find a way to this samadhi in the right way. The Buddha has mentioned that when the preconditions of sila and sense restraint are properly established, then there's no need to wish, may samadhi appear from me. Samadhi naturally swells and develops out of these preconditions. Sense restraint and sila. Sila, of course, is kind of virtuous behavior. How do you know that you have qualified? How, that life is complex, it happens fast, you say this, you say that, little slips of the tongue, a little bit of exaggeration, a little bit of maybe deception, you're not even sure yourself. And was that harsh speech, or was I just joking there? I'm not even sure myself. Remember Freud said there's no such thing as a joke, so sometimes you're joking, but you're not joking. That's your sila, that's your virtue. And how do you know that it's adequate for the cultivation of this samadhi? How do you know you're doing a good enough job? It's quite a thing to have to deal with the complexity of the ley line, especially little more chaotic structures, and how to keep up this sila. One way to know is if you can calm your mind. Then, if your mind can be calmed and remains awake, then I guess it means that your sila is good enough. It's one way to make sense of sila, make sense of virtuous behavior, both body and of speech. Right? And of course, of mind, sila is usually considered to be the outward behavior of speech and body, but the Buddha points out, somebody came to him and asked him if the compliance with the 5 precepts, abstaining from killing living beings, not taking what is not given, proper conduct in sensual and sexual matters, no lying, no intoxicants. If a person followed those and did not violate those, would then the Buddha regard that as keeping sila? And the Buddha said no, that it's not merely the following of the 5 precepts that constitute sila, because a 3-month-old child doesn't break the 5 precepts. Right? No killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying on his back, I suppose. No lying, no intoxicants, just the Baba. But he does not have sila. She does not have sila. She does not do that out of virtue. So virtue is also an attitude. Why don't you do these things? Your behavior and your speech are informed by a certain kind of predisposition. And I think that the predisposition is that, fundamentally, what is that fundamental thing? Is kind of, first of all, empathy, awareness of that other beings are very much like you. You do not, you in fact are important to yourself. You love yourself. You are the most important person to yourself. Admit it. This is one of the great moments in the suttas where King Pasenadi, one of the Buddhist disciples, who happened to be one of the most powerful kings in India, once he heard the Buddha talking about it, he lost interest really in the kingdom and power and all that stuff. And he and his wife, his chief queen Malika, instead of opening up with the courtiers and so forth, or making war on people, they just kind of lost interest, and they tend to spend a lot of the time on the rooftop of the palace meditating. And they were great buddies. They meditated together up there. One day, Pasenadi said to Malika, I was meditating there, and I had a realization that there's nobody in the world that I care about more than myself. And then he said to Malika, what about you? And then Malika is very, she's kind of put on the spot. You gotta be, she's a queen, all right, but the kings that really have a lot of power. You might think that the right tactful response was, oh, great king, of course, you're the most important person in the world. But Malika was honest and they were buddies, so she said, well, I've got to be truthful. There's nobody I care about more than me. And then she says, yeah, we'll have to go and talk to the Buddha about this. What does he have to say about this? And so they did talk to him. And he said, quite right. Oh, great king, and oh, Malika. Beings care about themselves. So knowing that, you recognize that's the way other people feel. That's the way other beings feel as well. So you would not want to harm. Knowing you don't want to be harmed. Your life is very, very important. Understanding now to use that, not to think, oh, that's egotistic. Somebody else's life should be more important to me than mine. I don't know where, that's actually, see, when you put it this way, your life is more important than anybody else's to you. And I think, well, is that saintly of me? But it's actually very important. One should have highly cultivated sense of concern for one's own well-being. I think if you don't have it, then I don't know if you can have it for other beings. That is the essence of recognizing how precious and important life is, how what you don't like and what you like, what you want to be left in peace, you don't want to be harmed, and so forth. The jump is here is to understand that that's the case for other beings as well. So this quality of sila, virtue, comes out of a recognition of this, the importance of well-being to beings, to other beings. And I said as extending this identity and the concern to other beings as well. Knowing that, how can you harm? So just saying the Dhammapada, all beings fear death. They tremble before violence. Knowing that, how can you harm them? So this fundamental identity, awareness, universality of this is at the root of this. If that feeling is there, then the precepts or sila falls into place in a fairly natural, intuitive way. So we know whether our sila is adequate by the results. Remember that saying, somebody came to Christ and asked them there about various teachings. How do we know whether a teaching is good or not? He said, well, you'll know them by their fruits. You'll know the teachings by the results. So the results of this sila are very, very important. They get imbalanced in various directions. You will feel it, you'll know it by the results. You have excess concern for yourself, but little concern for others. You will feel the heart will be cool, too cool. If you have excess concern for others, but not yourself, then the heart can often be too warm, too hard. And so one will not have this balanced peace. There's a story about the nature of loving kindness and its balance. 4 people are taken by a gang of bandits that practice human sacrifice. Well, you can imagine being maybe in Afghanistan or Iraq. You and your 3 buddies are walking down the street and you're taken off and for hostage material. And the leader of the gang kidnaps you, says, we need one example here. I want you to choose amongst you 4 who's going to lose their head. Now turns out that the 3 other people that you're with, one of them is your best friend. One of them is a real enemy of yours. And the other one is someone you haven't met before. You just happen to be along with the group. So you don't even know them. And the demand is made that you choose which of the 4 of you will be the person who's there. So how do you choose? You play the great role of the saint and offer your own neck. Or you think, wow, it's pretty obvious here. My enemy's gotta go. He's gotta go first, right? Choose him. Or maybe the stranger, because I don't have any emotional relationship to him at all. Maybe I do my enemy, and then I'll feel like really like I'm kind of aiding and abetting in a murder and stuff, and then it'll come to haunt me. So maybe the stranger would be better. Or maybe my best friend, like maybe he'll understand what kind of situation I'm in. So it's a good situation to understand this nature. Where do we give the importance? Who gets the high priority? This is right around this sense of sila and relationship to other beings. This is the foundation also of your ease and peace of mind. The answer, if one really has a grasp of the nature, the unconditional nature of loving kindness, is that the answer is none. You're not going to choose. You're not going to prefer yourself to be sacrificed. You're not going to prefer your enemy to be sacrificed. You're not going to prefer a stranger to be sacrificed. And you're not going to prefer your friend to be sacrificed. To prefer any of them would not be really unconditional goodwill. It would be a bias in there. The Buddha said, well, why would you sacrifice yourself? Why would you have bias in that direction? Why would you sacrifice your enemy? Why would you have bias in that direction? Why a stranger? Why your friend? It's all to do with convention and bias. All beings are the same. They all love life. They all fear death. So this is the proper perspective on things, non-preferential, true unconditional. If you devalue yourself, then you're still conditioned, biased, still have a thing about the self. So part of this, the root of ethics, or the root of sila, of virtue, is close to this. There's an element of non-self involved in it, the reduction of self. If that takes place, then the mind feels so light. You feel less worried and preoccupied. You feel less remorseful. Why do you feel less remorseful? Because once you have a certain genuine insight into the universal nature of beings, and universal, I mean that they're all one. We are one. We are living beings. We see that we expand our identity outwards. Nothing personal about me, nothing personal about them. So we begin to feel this through, this is an intuition which is available when we wonder to ourselves, what am I doing here? Who are these people? Who am I? What's going on? It's likely that the mind asking these questions will start to move towards this realization of the universal nature of these beings. It's nothing all that personal or self-created or totally individualistic about any of us. So at the root of that, love others as yourself, or love thy neighbor as thyself. So this in some way not just a conventional saying, but it's kind of, it comes out of a recognition that in some ways your neighbor is yourself. You are them, they are you. There's nothing personal. At the deepest level, that's where the ethic comes from. At a less deep level, a less realized level, it's just a warmth of heart, kind of an opening of heart, which is gratifying, which is very beautiful, one of the beautiful emotions of metta. Metta points in the direction of this reduction of the clinging to a strong sense of identity, anatta, all that stuff. The rewards of metta, of goodwill, are ecstasy, jhana. Metta is a topic, a stepping stone, merges, can't really be separated from a samadhi. So it comprises your sila. It's good enough if you can feel at peace. And so to reflect on the things that might be keeping you from being at peace, remorse of the past, worry of the past, worry about your future, feeling maybe things are unjust, or excess worry about others, what's happened to others, and so forth. This somewhat injurious, self-injurious. Worry itself is a kind of form of lack of compassion for yourself. So this is a very beautiful way. When I first came to Buddhism, I'd been thinking a lot about ethics. I think quite early in life, why shouldn't I do this? Or why am I supposed to do that? I would always put it in a very intellectual framework. I would look for the why. Of course, in some of the theistic traditions, it's just because God said so. It's that there's not very poor explanation. It's God, it's just the commandment. God said you have to do that. Don't ask anything more than that. Of course, it's totally inadequate explanation. And so, of course, I also was interested in philosophy, studying philosophy and looking for the roots of moral philosophy. They used to have this term, it faded out around the beginning of the 20th century. They actually, in the West, they seriously had, discussions on what's called moral philosophy. As the 20th century came along, nobody could seriously use those terms anymore. Moral philosophy, based on what? And they were questioning the existence of God and so forth. And it's hard to just use that as authoritative argument. So being a citizen of the 20th century in the West, I had some very serious inquiries into why do anything in particular, etc. So only when I came to meditate, try to attain this, stop thinking or reading philosophy books or psychology books or political science books or whatever you want kind of books, and sit down and see if you can be peaceful with your own mind. And I'm being confronted with quite a massive, unstoppable idea making. And also being confronted with the idea of sila, these precepts, trying to make sense of those from my questioning philosophical background. Something about it, just appealed to me, probably appeals to all of you. It's nice to have sort of clarity in life, just some sort of do this, don't do that. It tends to be very draining in terms of always having to choose moment by moment. So anyway, eventually I got a little peace of mind. And when I did finally get some peace of mind, and that had followed behaving myself for a while, then I made the connection. I realized that the Buddhist kind of definition of samadhi is that, or of sila, virtuous behavior, is that which leads to samadhi, peace. You cannot really find this peace unless certain conditions have been fulfilled. That is a it's self-explanatory. You don't need to look for any other philosophical reasons or outward reasons or authoritative reasons, that is, God's commandments or anything like that. It becomes self-confirming that one is living in a skillful enough way that the mind is responding in a very unmistakable, positive, self-confirming way. That's what is going on. This mind, by the way, is not, again, it's not personal, is it? What is this mind? It's some sort of energy. We call it consciousness and volition and feelings and perception and all this sort of thing. What is it really? Nothing personal. A very precisely ordered energy, mental energy of the universe. Very precisely ordered, functioning by its own lawful structure. And beings like the Buddha and others who have deep insight into this notice this universal symmetry, that mind has laws and responds, and crudely put the laws are kind of precepts or suggestions about behavior, but at a deeper level, they are the patternings of consciousness in the universe. And when it's like a couple of notes on a stringed instrument, or two blow-on instruments or bells, when they ring at certain frequencies, there is this very called harmonious effect. The mind recognizes it in all cultures, all different places, and recognizes this harmonious quality. So whatever sila, whatever precepts and so forth are constructed, the deeper meaning of it, the recognition of it, comes in that. What does it produce in terms of your mental states? It's just self-confirmation. So if one feels lighter, clearer, freer, the recognition of harmony, then one's conduct in life is on the right track. You've had confirmation. If you're not getting confirmation, one has to reflect again. where am I going off? Am I giving away too much of myself? Am I holding back too much of myself? What's my sense of, where is my sense of self? Is there a balance between the heart and clarity and ease? Are they? So just sitting, for taking 10 days and just sort of sitting, a lot of this, even whether you got instructions or not, these things begin to percolate and bubble up and tend to point in certain directions. Insights arise. Because the mind, it knows. There's the superficial mind or cultural mind or education mind, etc. But there's a deeper aspect of our mind that knows things. We can see that out in nature. The animals don't go to school, they don't, etc. But they know things. They know. They're very skillful. Amazing. That's mind. That's universal mind. This intuitive knowledge that is there, this is discovered in contemplative schools, and so the primary things are this, extended periods of silence, extended periods of non-outward preoccupations, the turning away from the outward stimulation, in order to allow the mind to process, to do its thing. Some of the schools are not, some individual within that school has blundered across it, or is very gifted, intuitive, and has discovered. And so most of the schools that are contemplative have roughly found these kind of parameters which lead towards these mysterious changes, transformations. Some of them are more vague and mysterious than others, and some of them are highly articulated. I don't know of any that are as clearly and highly articulated as the Buddhist schools. They're very, very clear and precise about what's going on and what is needed. But for anybody, at any place, in any time, this is a universal necessity. You cannot find peace and be without sila, without this virtue structure. At the bottom of the virtue structure is this certain level of identity with beings and the reduction of the sense of the personal. So in your, in the process of so-called meditating, this is required. You have to question in some ways. You have to ask yourself, okay, what's there? Are there any blocks, any doors shut? Is my mind remorseful? What's blocking me from freedom and lightness, ease? So we have to ask, what's getting between me and peace? We haven't tasted peace before. We don't even know what it might be, but we all have a sense that it must be something good. It's famous. Anybody who tastes it, this is one of the best. This is the best taste of all. Nothing like taste, peace, freedom. It's all mixed together. You can't have freedom without peace. Bound by things. Peace is a form of freedom. So we keep asking, well, what's keeping me from being free? What's keeping me from being at peace? This is one way for yourself, without just trusting the Buddhist instructions or my instructions. You can see for yourself. There's this, what's between me and freedom? Where do I keep drifting? Where do I keep losing it? How do I lose it? And you have to have some self-confidence. Self-confidence, sort of ironically, comes from not thinking, well, others can do it, but I can't. That's a form of self. See, that's a form of conceit or believing that you're kind of personal, that you are special in some way. But you're not, fortunately. Fortunately not. Nothing personal about you. You're universal. And so you have access to this piece as well. So don't let the thought of the egotistic thought, which goes in the opposite direction, well, this may not be available to me. Remembering that this is the universal mind. You didn't make it, it's not yours. You cannot take credit for your capacities. You cannot take credit for being born human, for having this intelligence, this sensitivities. They're just there. So in that impersonal way, they glorious. These are universal possibilities, therefore it can come to me as well. So I will leave these reflections for you tonight.
Okay, so welcome to Danusha and Charles Lee. So we'll open the floor now for discussion. Yes, Sarah.
One thing that he said that really jumped out at me was that worry is a lack of compassion for the self.
Yes.
And worry is big in my life. It seems to me it's the way that I'm thinking about my other people. He also said, you are the most important person in the world to yourself, which is sort of like the opposite of what I was raised with, that look after everybody else, and then if there's any time left over, you might think about yourself. How can I address this worry? Are there any good techniques to kind of try to nip it in the bud when I feel myself going down that road, which just ends up in despair?
Yeah, I think, the Buddha, he had 5 ways to let go of thought. So worrying is thinking. And step 1 was to do a substitution. So, that would be to put your mind somewhere else. And then if that's not working, then the second method, which I think would be very good here, is to look at how it's harming you. Like, just notice, like, how does your body feel when you're worried? Like, it's probably tense or heavy or uncomfortable, like you're suffering. When you're worrying, you're suffering. So feel that suffering. It's like when we feel the hot coal in our hand, that's when we automatically let it go. So if you can feel how much suffering you're creating for yourself, then that's giving you an opportunity to just feel that hot coal and let it go. And you can do some more cognitive things about this, like, how much is this helping the situation? And it's not, so bringing that to mind, like, here I am, I'm creating all this, like, I feel terrible right now and it's not doing any good. So like just becoming very clear of that rather than just automatically being on the treadmill of worrying, stop and feel it and examine it and hopefully feeling that hot coal will let you drop it. If this method, which is step 2, doesn't work, then step 3 is to distract yourself. Like Ajahn Sona says, go and clean out a drawer or clean out a closet or like put your mind, distract your mind with something else.
Yeah.
Method 4 is to gradually calm yourself down. He says to go from running to walking to standing to sitting to lying down. So if your mind is going a million miles an hour worrying about something, then maybe you could step that down by giving your mind something to think about that's not so intense, and then just gradually stepping it down until you can be in silence. And the 5th method is it's just used in situations where you're going to say or do something that's going to really cause harm to self or others. And that's when you like clamp the mouth shut and, grind the teeth together and push the tongue on the top of the mouth. So, or stick your hands in your pockets. So you're not hitting anybody or throwing something or having bad words come out of your mouth. But that doesn't really apply to worry unless the worry brings you to, saying or doing something that's not going to be skillful.
I guess I think that worry is me actually being compassionate to other people because I'm always worrying about someone. And I'm thinking that as I'm thinking, I might come across some solution which would be helpful to that person. And so I kid myself into thinking that worrying is actually about helping whomever.
Right.
And
And so
they have to help themselves.
And what is your experience with how well that works?
Hasn't done a bit of good yet.
Well, so then that's what you're going to bring to mind in step 2.
I guess that's what I have to remember.
Yeah, that's what you have to remember. It hasn't done any good up to this point. And it's hard to have solutions for other people because, other people usually have their own ideas of what's going to be helpful or not helpful. And sometimes they're open to, so you could say, would you like me to give you a suggestion or something? But if they say no, well, then you just drop it because they're not going to listen anyway.
Right.
Like I have found for myself that solutions to things that seem to be like sometimes you've got an issue in life and it just doesn't seem like there's a win-win solution or, there's a good solution. Mm-hmm. I've often found that just going into silence really helps. Like maybe drop in the question, but then let it go and just go about your life or whatever. And then I've been quite amazed at how ideas percolate up from who knows where. Because if the thinking mind could have come up with a good solution, it would have done it by now.
Yeah.
So who knows if we tap into some kind of universal wisdom or if just the big thing is when we become peaceful, we have a much, we have a better ability to contact reality and to see reality for how it is. So when our minds are just full of worrying thoughts or, distress or whatever, our view of the world is so tainted. It's hard to get a solution to what's going on. So if we can just pull away from that and bring ourselves to some peace or quiet or stillness, then the mind has a much better ability to look at that situation and to come up with some kind of a reasonable way to approach the situation.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that worry is really for me pessimism.
Mm-hmm.
The optimism of coming from a place of silence.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay, so now Leslie, it's got the thing over there.
I'd just like to share an experience I had this week that might help. I had a disagreement with somebody who was important to me on Sunday, and it really upset me. I was distressed all through Sunday and Monday, and Tuesday I was sitting down to meditate, and it occurred to me that I needed to practice metta for myself. And so I started off very nicely with, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, and that was nice. But then it evolved into, I want to be happy, I want to be peaceful, I want to be, to enjoy life, I want to be well. And then it evolved into, I deserve to be happy, I deserve to be peaceful. And believe it or not, at the end of that, I was so much calmer, so peaceful. And he said, metta it can lead to, I believe he said, metta can really lead to samadhi. What I felt was almost approaching samadhi. I give myself permission to be free of this worry and this guilt and this shame. And it was so freeing, my goodness. So it helps to remember that it isn't, you don't just have to ask politely. You have to remind yourself that you want it and you deserve it. And these other people, the rest of the world want it and deserve it too. And you may get to that point. I didn't think I needed to, actually. I was so much freer after just giving myself permission. So there, that worked for me this week.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I like the analogy of, when the cup is full, it runneth over, like when we take care of ourselves and take care of our needs, then we have the energy and the excess energy that we can focus on helping others. If we're just always focused outwards, you get to what's called in the helping professions burnout, and then you're no good to anybody. So taking care of yourself is one way to allow you to take care of others or help others. Okay, Kelly.
36, but you're that old. My goodness. I felt personally when people worry about me that it's almost like they don't trust that I can do it. So my mom is a huge worrier, and I've adapted that habit energy, which I'm working on myself. But it just, I say, Mom, like, you constantly worry about me and what life's gonna bring, that makes me feel inadequate or incompetent. I just wanted to make that comment just because perhaps they're feeling that on the other end with you worrying, because we're all connected. That's one thing that I got from that talk, is that these people, we're all connected, and putting that wise attention from maybe the harmful thoughts that come up to the wise attention to, they're a part of me. If I'm, that shifted something this morning, that they're a part of me. So if I'm even not acting out the thoughts, they're still feeling it. It's still a vibration. And just it's hard to pull the mind back to wise attention. I mean, no, I don't even want to say that. It's getting easier every day. But sometimes they're really half a second. It's just like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Ajahn Brahm said something last night in the talk I was listening to, that solutions aren't found in worry, they're found in stillness. And you said that this morning, and yeah, that's my comment.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's yeah, the body centered psychotherapy that I practiced in my career. That was our main thing, was just having faith that the person knew what was right and true for them. And your job as a therapist wasn't to tell them what to do, but was to be the oil can to help sort of lubricate the way down to them coming to their own knowing. Yeah. Okay, we're at 10 o'clock. So we'll do our ending. So today's our third week. So we end with the Brahma Vihara of mudita, being happy for the happiness of others. And so we just go around the room and the Zoom room, the live room and the Zoom room. And if you wish to pass, that's fine. But otherwise, if you'd like to share a recent happiness or a recent good deed that you've done, then the practice for the rest of us hearing this is to feel happiness for you. And should the near enemy envy arise, then you do your best to transform it back to mudita, back to happiness. So my happiness is immediately after we end this meeting, I am off to Edmonton to celebrate my mother-in-law's 99th birthday. So I'm looking forward to this social experience. Okay, Kelly?
I'm pretty happy with the connection I'm developing with my daughter, and feeling grateful for her coming to me and oiling the way to my healing of my habit energy.
Yeah, great. Leslie?
Well, I'm happy that I learned that I deserve to be happy.
Great. Sarah?
Well, I'm happy that I was reminded that I'm the most important person to me in the world. I really needed to hear that today, and so it was wonderful that was part of the lesson.
Great. Danusha?
I'm happy these days because I just found out I have COVID again.
Oh no.
And I have time to practice more, and I can stay home from work.
That's the silver lining in having COVID.
There's no danger of envy there.
Don't be envy.
May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Lise, Blair, Kelly. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Good for you, Leslie. I've been doing that with the home, may I find a home, like, oh,